to. I can't talk about meeting Gerda, as I can't remember a time when I didn't know her. She and Kurt, her beloved Kurt, they arrived in Buffalo in 1946, and I was born in 1947. And my mother was one of her first friends here. So, and we lived on parallel streets. I think not when she first arrived in Buffalo, but of course I don't remember that. I think they lived near Kleinham's Music Hall, but then we lived on parallel streets in Buffalo. And I remember thinking Gerda was beautiful. I mean, when I was a child, and fascinating. I loved her gentle ways and her, to me, very exotic and interesting accent. And I played with Gerda and Kurt's children, especially Vivian, with whom I was the closest in age. I assume that everybody here, I think, was she a member of Shir Shalom at any point? No.
I think that's Zion. I think they were members of Beth Zion.
That's what I remember. And my family was members of Beth Zion. So, and that would have made sense. Before the family moved to Kenmore, we lived on Potomac and between Delaware and Chapin, and the Kleins lived on Inwood, which was the next street over. So her book, I don't know how many people are familiar with her book. Kathy Shoemaker just arrived, good, and hopefully we'll share a poem. Her book, All But My Life, is primarily about the 350-mile sub-zero death march that she took with 4,000 other young girls. About 125 survived. This book came out in 1957, so I was 10 and I eagerly read it then. But as a 10-year-old, of course, I wept through it and it just blasted my consciousness. I read it because I knew and loved Gerda. This is her inscription. How is the view working here? Okay.
You're good.
Okay, thank you. It says beautifully, to Irene, member of a family whose friendship I treasure with all my love, Gerda. So, at first I just knew her as this wonderful mother of my friends and friend of my mother's. And then I plunged into this harrowing story. I also have The Hours After, which is letters between her and Kurt that were exchanged before they could actually get together. And this wonderful book, A Boring Evening at Home. And she refers to this book, A Boring Evening at Home, when she won the award that President Obama gave her. She spoke of seeing faces. I don't know how familiar people are with that evening, seeing her. I don't know if I should speak about that a little bit, or about what day? That was at the Academy Awards, yeah. Or, well, I'll say a little bit about that. She spoke at the Academy Awards of seeing faces from the past who perished, including her best friend, Ilsa, who was younger than she and who died in her arms. And that night, Gerda said, in giving thanks, she said, I wish to thank you for honoring the memory of those who perished. And she said, you cannot do that in a better way than when you return to your homes tonight to realize the joy of coming home and of being able to experience a boring evening at home, something that the people who did not survive would never, and how easily we say, oh, it's just another boring evening at home. And she said, those of you who know the joy of that freedom, each of you is a winner too, as she was a winner that night receiving this, very prestigious award. I don't know if everybody knows the liberation story. Shall I speak briefly to that?
Please.
She and these few remaining young women, she started this walk. She started her whole experience in the concentration camps. She was moved from one to the other when she was 15, and she was 18 when she wound up after this perilous march in what had been a bicycle factory. It was set with explosives that the girls knew was going to blow up, but there was a rainstorm and it didn't connect, and the building did not explode. And shortly thereafter, there were the American soldiers who were there to liberate her. And the touching story that Gerda often told was that Kurt, who was to become her husband, approached her standing outside the bicycle factory. He was an American soldier. She thought that it was a German tank coming, and then saw that it was an American tank. And when he approached, he said something to her, and she said, I have to tell you, I'm a Jew. There was a long silence, and Kurt said, I am too. Whereupon he opened the door to the bicycle factory for her. She weighed 68 pounds. She hadn't taken a bath in 3 years. She was emaciated, shell of a human being. And to have a young man open a door for her was just a beyond experience. That gesture of humanity and politeness. He said, where are the other ladies? Would you take me to them? And she did. Yeah, thanks, Dave, for that. So she says he was like a god to her. And that was the beginning of their love affair, which lasted, I know they celebrated their 50th anniversary. Kurt died before she did, but they went on to do all this wonderful work. I guess I veered from my early memories, but she turned what could have been bitterness to a lifetime of education and teaching and establishing a foundation in which they offered free teaching materials to teachers to go on for appropriate age levels. And Gerda will talk, Ganilla will talk a little bit about her coming to Buffalo and seeing her there. So maybe you want to talk about that. I remember seeing her at Damon College and just bursting into tears because it had been years since I had seen her, and seeing her brought back memories of my mother too, and their constant phone conversations. Every time Gerda would return to Buffalo, even after acquiring all her fame and traveling around the world, she would always call my mother. And if they couldn't get together, they would always have a heart-to-heart. So I have the warmest personal memories of her, as well as the highest respect for her as a humanitarian and activist.
Oh, the best friend, the best neighbor. Unbelievable. And if you ever visit Damon College, where I taught for about 10 years, it used to be, as you know, a rosary hill run by nuns. And so you may wonder, if you go into the Wick Center upstairs, the big place where everybody eats and gathers, on the one hand you have a huge Christian cross, and on the other hand there is an enormous Star of David. And the first time I was there, I'm like, what? And it's because of Gerda Weissman Klein. who came here after the Second World War when she got married to Kurt Klein and raising 3 children,
Yes.
right? So she had a job in the library at Damon College, what is now Damon College. And one of these nuns, whose name I don't know, but I've heard this story over and over while I was a professor there, that one day she came to work and the nun told her, you know what? The library can take care of itself. You have a story to tell. And she took her upstairs somewhere in one of the buildings. There was a stack of papers, there were some different pencils, there was a glass of water. And the nun said, write your story. And this is how the first book, All About My Life, came about.
It's
And
wonderful.
she also wrote a very interesting book that those of us from Temple Beth Am, who became Shir Shalom, called The Blue Rose. And maybe this became in some way her most famous book, because she had another neighbor, Lillian Gerstmann, across the street, and she had Gerda felt neglected to buy the girl, who was a little different. Gerda wanted to give her a present, but she hadn't bought anything. So she wrote a book about her called The Blue Rose. And we all know that there are pink, yellow, and red roses, but the blue roses are very special. And it was about this child. I remember her very well. I knew her mother. We were good friends. And the daughter was, yeah, a little different. I don't know how you're supposed to say this. But Gerda knew. And so this became one of her most famous books. And I just want to read something about it. Here's a photo of the actual girl. Then they made a new version of this book with a different girl and a more updated vocabulary, because you can't say nowadays things like she was retarded. So they changed the language. But here's just a little bit from this book. I sometimes think Jenny is like a bird with very short wings. For such a bird, flying is very hard. It takes more strength, more effort, more time. A bird with normal wings takes flying for granted. But the bird with short wings has to work much harder at learning, and in a way, it has to be smarter. So if you haven't seen this book, I really recommend it. It became kind of a big world famous. I also wanted to mention that when Gerda Weissman Klein came to Buffalo, one of the times I met her twice. Second time with Cantor Susan Whaley, and I tell you, the between these two, I mean, Cantor Susan, her 2 parents survived Auschwitz, and then Gerda Weissman Klein. It was like, you remember it, Perry, you were right there. But I gave her one of my poems that I dedicated to my parents-in-law, who are Holocaust survivors. And here is a letter, I don't know if you can see it, handwritten from her. And it says, Dear Gunilla, thank you for your beautiful, moving poem, Grand Central Station. I am deeply touched. Fond regards from. So yeah, you saw I framed it. It's like one of my most special memories. So I thought before we start the open reading, if it's okay, I will read this poem, Grand Central Station. It's one of the first poems I wrote in English. So it's very special, and that she would honor it that way. Then we will ask Rabbi to read, Joanne to read, and then we'll open the reading for everybody. Grand Central Station. Standing in Grand Central Station, New York City, USA, I realize it isn't all that different from my heart. Trains leaving at all times in different directions, like my family living in Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Israel, Spain, France, Argentina, Chile, America, Canada, Ireland, and England. Destinations of hope, heartbreak, and a will to be at home. Frail, beautiful Aunt Kate, who left for Shanghai, is dying in San Jose Valley 40 years later, and has one thing she wants me to understand. It was not interesting. Whatever you will write about that time, don't tell them it was interesting. I say nothing and listen to the German R's that still burrow brazenly through her broken English. I hear the trains that left full of breathing people came back filled with echoes and names and echoes. The memory of their names redrawing the map of Europe. The echo of their names, leaving us to shape our destiny. Their destinations burn, golden, white, hot spots through the map, to which we must return again and again to kiss and bow, kiss and cry, kiss and hold, kiss and pray, kiss and burn. Grand Central Station, New York City, USA. Their hearts were connected to every heart, yet they were abandoned by all. All right, let's start. Thank you. Rabbi, are you ready?
Yeah, well, I was very moved. I got to meet Gerda. She was an incredible person. And I think that All But My Life was one of the very first Holocaust books that was written. I do believe preceded Night, other than Frankel's The Meaning of Life, what says his book, I don't think there was a book that was written earlier about the experience. And then, of course, The Blue Rose, she was also amazing with that. And that's when I got to meet her. She came about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Incredible person, though. I have 2 poems I was just working on this week. I've been thinking a lot about what's happening in Ukraine. It just breaks your heart every day. And I was thinking about our story of the Exodus. And this was a poem that I wrote for that, because sometimes we think it was our choice to leave, but it's not something you just have to decide and go. It's called Egypt. Leaving is not our choice, neither is staying. The upright pyramids gleam like sand. The sand gleams like fallen pyramids. We gather belongings, count heads, approach the door. We curse, bless, cough. Taskmasters steady whips. The eyes of our neighbors stare. Pharaoh may catch us. Elijah cannot save us. We walk through the threshold. There is no returning. Leaving is not our choice. And then I've just been falling in love with the trees lately. So, sometimes we just don't see what's right in front of us, and they're just so amazing. I can't say this captured them fully, but I just wanted to share the poem anyways. It's called Tree Limbs. I love trees in winter, the way they bend, wind, cascade, each branch a ballet dancer in an intricate routine, still striving, nimble. The instruments of human society, telephone poles stripped of imagination, practical boxed houses, no match for their dexterity. Large-armed elks and maples simply evade capture, bending, curving like wide receivers, buds bursting forth like fireworks. Summer trees are closed in green like bloom magical disguises, tricking our eyes into believing it is easy, like holding our breath in shallow bathwater. Underneath, our heart pounds like anvils. And I hate to do this, but I have to go to another meeting. So just wishing everyone a happy Passover, and I'm really grateful for this group we have, and enjoy all the poetry.
Happy
Thank you,
Passover.
Rabbi.
Thanks.
Yeah, some people sometimes ask, like, why does Rabbi Alex always gets to read first? But he does have a job that has no hours. It's a full-time, 24/7 job. So that's okay. And now, I think, Joanne, you had brought a poem or two?
I brought one. I actually
No, she's
enjoy,
been here helping us, setting all this up for over 2 years. And then before that, and you never read something. So I'm so glad you are doing it tonight.
thank you for inviting me to. I appreciate it. So I actually like Amanda Gorman. I've been very impressed with her presence and her skill and her energy. So I found something that I wanted to share. It's called The Hill We Climb. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just is isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. Thank
She's
you.
very engaging. I I I feel, and she engages so deeply with issues that we all need to engage with more deeply. So yeah, and who will forget her that, what is it, orange yellow robe she
Right.
was wearing?
Yellow.
That was great. So Irene, did you want to read something?
I will read. Am I muted or not?
No, you're fine.
Okay. I will read a short poem to poetry, and it's called Poetry. And I've had the fun of having this poem on a big bus stop shelter. It's Summer and Elmwood in Buffalo. So through just Buffalo Literary Center. So they did this project, and some of the poems are on buses, and some of the poems are printed in bus shelters. So this is it. Poetry. Don't do it because you want to get something off your chest. It's not about your chest. It's about what wants to sound itself out, to skip and slide into shapes of spaces and swooshes, spoken or broken in lines on the page. Don't do it to shove in a drawer. You have enough stuff in your drawer. Don't save it, spend it, send it, donate it to a pocket, leave it on a subway seat, scrawl it on a rock, chalk it on a wall. Don't lock it, don't block it. Place 2 poems in closed fists and offer this hand or that. I think perhaps next, Sarah Blackman, are you ready to read a poem? Sarah was here and Sarah signed up on the chat.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. This poem is called Mina. My 4 foot 9 inch, 88-year-old mother was as unusual as her name, Mina. I never knew anyone else who had it. She wore 3-inch heels to museum openings, volunteered somewhere different each day of the week, lunched on soup at Nordstrom, and patiently peeled every string off the celery for her egg salad. Her favorite expressions, delivered with the full force of her faith, were "do it" and "make a new friend every day." She knew all the baristas at Starbucks by name and always insisted on treating me. I have a card, as if that made it free. All this until 1 month before she died. 3 years later, to the day, I walked into a Starbucks to order my iced decaf quad grande half pump mocha Americano and was greeted by a petite barista with a welcoming smile and a hand-lettered name tag that read Mina.
Oh,
Mm,
love that. Thank
yeah,
you, Sarah. Love that.
nice.
You've inspired me. My mother's name was Honora, also the only person I've known with that name.
It's a beautiful name.
Yeah, that's a special poem. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, you made me remember now that I was in Israel right before the pandemic in Eilat, in a little fish restaurant, by the Red Sea. And I ordered a glass of Chardonnay, and some young woman brought it to me. And when she smiled, she had Cantor Susan's smile.
Mm.
It was unbelievable, like a visitation of some kind.
Mm.
So that made me think of it. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing about Gerda Klein?
Sure.
Maybe you all know this, but she also had another book that was written for children about the Holocaust. And I did not know how to tell my children about it, but I felt that I must. And I went to her home, her apartment, and I purchased a book from her. She was lovely. I can't really say that I knew her except through everything I knew about her in this book. And I read it to my children. It was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, but it was so much easier than it would have been otherwise.
Mm.
Well, that was her purpose, that was part of it. They had the Gerda and Kurt Klein Foundation. And I think they didn't form that until 1998. But that's the free teaching materials, I think, that you're talking about. How old were your children when you decided you could do that?
Elementary.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you, Sarah.
Daniel, you're here. Daniel, will you tell what you told your mother when she said about the Jews that were killed in the camps, and you asked, did they kill the children too? What was that story? Your mother used to tell me about this all the time. You don't remember it?
When I asked if they killed kids too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I was a little kid, that shocked me.
Yeah. And we know how many of the murdered were children, so.
That's what I was saying. I was only 10 when I digested, the whole all but my life. Yeah. So it was not watered down for children, but because I knew her, I insisted on reading it.
And that's a great book. Every year while I was at Damon, I would teach a lot of rhetoric and composition. And so every year, every semester, I chose one person who wrote something really good or interesting or different. And I would give that person kind of a little present in front of everybody to encourage so and so. And it was always all but my life, which made sense. Now, next on the line here is Donna Grace. Are you ready?
Yes, I chose a poem called The Swan at Edgewater Park by Ruth L. Schwartz. It isn't one of those prissy rich people's swans. Wouldn't be at home on some pristine pond. Chooses the whole stinking shoreline, candy wrappers, condoms in its tidal fringe. Prefers to curve its muscular, slightly grubby neck into the body of a great lake, swilling whatever it is swans swill. Chardonnay of algae with bouquet of crud, while Clevelanders walk by saying, "Look at that big duck." Beauty isn't the point here. Of course, the swan is beautiful, but not like Lori at 16 when everything was possible. No, more like Lori at 27, smoking away her days off in her dirty kitchen, her kid with asthma watching TV. The boyfriend who doesn't know yet she's going to leave him, washing his car out back, and he's a runty little guy and drinks too much. And it's not his kid anyway, but he loves her. He really does. He loves them both. That's the kind of swan this is.
Yeah. And that's in Poetry 180, which Billy Collins edited. And of course, we can see why he would choose that wonderful poem, because it has such a great turn. And that's a fondness of Billy Collins. It's a great poem. Thank you, Donna. Perry, do you want to read a poem and or talk about Saturday?
Sure. I asked the ladies if I could just mention a poetry event that I'm hosting on Saturday. People might be interested in. It's an international poetry reading open. Let's see, it's at the Italian Center, and the new Italian Center on Delaware and Hurdle, which is just a beautiful, beautiful place. And they've lent the room to us for the afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Saturday. And the idea is that I wanted to do was an international theme. So basically you could read a poem in another language, read a translation, a poem by an international poet, or just something inspired by your own background, let's say. What else can I tell you about it? It's free for members. It's $5 for non-members. And think about coming. I think it'll be a really fun time, and it's a beautiful place. The Italian Center is trying to open the place to everyone, to the community, not just Italians. So I'm hoping that there'll be a real mix of people there. So you might want to think about it. If you have any questions, who said Perry? Oh, Jan.
Sorry, I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
No, I was done. I was blabbing.
Isn't that the former, it's kind of very appropriately a former library there.
It was that old library that was there when I was a kid.
Park, is that it?
Park, yep.
They gutted it, and it's really beautiful. So I mean, Irene and David have seen it. It's really, really nice. And they're trying to do some cultural events. So I suggested this to them, and hopefully, if it works out, we might become a monthly thing. I'm not really sure. But so far, I can't believe the people that have contacted me about attending. And so I think it'll be fun. Just something, if you're there, and if you have any questions, you can always email me at perrysnicholas@gmail.com. A very short poem that I wrote recently. It's funny that you said Poetry 180, because this actually, the first line comes from a poem by Robley Wilson that was in Poetry 180. It came from the first prompt that was in my prompt book in my creative writing class. And I took his first line and I had the students fill in the blank and then try to continue the metaphor through. And his first line was, "I wish in the city of your heart." It's a beautiful, short little poem. So I tried it, and this is what I came up with recently. Island walk. I wish on the island of your heart, you allow me to walk the perimeter, be the lee shore, the shelter your eyes strain to find through fog. A test of its boundaries across a 1-mile radius, our journey might still feel infinite. I'll meet your vessel, delicately gather what treasures I can carry to you, bring them to the untouched edge of the sea. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Perry. And I look forward to Saturday. I think it'll be very.
I don't know quite what to expect. I guess I envisioned something like Nadia was doing during the pandemic on the Zoom. Remember, Ganella? She had a really nice thing where people met and read all kinds of poems: Iranian, Persian, Italian, African American, Jewish, and so I guess I envisioned that, except in person. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank
That
you.
sounds really good. I wish I could come. I'm afraid we are having guitar recital thing that afternoon, so I don't know if I can wing it. I'll see. Now, Jan Sandberg, you wanted to read something? Please.
Sorry. I thought I was saving time by putting the poem out beforehand, and then I too quickly moved away from the Zoom window and I couldn't find how to unmute myself. So I realized, I mean, I knew I was not up on contemporary poets much at all. And the little I am is really thanks to the poetry, to the corner, and to the poem a week that Gunilla and Irene and Perry, you know, are you still doing that you've been sending out weekly?
We were supposed to do one today, but somehow we all
Well, that's okay,
got a
but it's
little
introduced me.
crazy. You know, I have a daughter getting married,
Oh my goodness, I forgot.
so
That's right,
things are a little
Mazel tov.
bit. But yes, we are doing it. We will
You have a
keep
pretty
doing
good
it.
excuse. You have a pretty good excuse. So and you know, your poems a week have really introduced me to some really interesting poets. Not all of whom are contemporary, I guess, right? But I decided I wanted to try somebody contemporary. So I Googled around and I came up with Ada Limon.
Love her.
And oh yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I'll end up really liking her, but I was very intrigued by a few of her poems. So this is called American Pharaoh. And let me just get it on the screen here. Okay. Despite the morning's gray static of rain, we drive to Churchill Downs at 6 a.m., eyes still swollen shut with sleep. I say, remember when I used to think everything was getting better and better? Now I think it's just getting worse and worse. I know it's not what I'm supposed to say as we machine our way through the silent 70 minutes on 64, overpayment still fractured from the winter's wreckage. I'm tired. I've had vertigo for 5 months, and on my first day home, he's shaken me awake to see this horse, not even race, but work. He gives me his jacket as we face the deluge from car to the twin-spire turnstiles. And once deep in the fern green grandstands, I see the crowd. A few hundred maybe, black umbrellas, cameras and notepads. Wet-winged, eager early birds come to see this Kentucky-bred bay colt with his chewed-off tail, trained to end the almost 40-year American Triple Crown drought. A man next to us, some horse racing heavy, ticks off a list of reasons why this horse, his speed-laden pedigree, muscle and bone recovery, etc., could never win the grueling 1.5-mile Belmont Stakes. Then the horse with his misspelled name comes out, first just casually cantering with his lead horse, and next a brief break in the storm, and he's racing against no one but himself and the official clocker, monstrously fast and head down, so we can see that faded star flash on his forehead like this is real gladness. As the horse eases up and we close our mouths to swallow, the heavy next to us folds his arms, says what I want to say too. I take it all back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. That was,
Irene, did you know that poem?
yes.
I
Yeah,
did not
it
know.
does.
Thank you. Yes, I like her a lot. Thank you for reading that.
You're welcome. Thank you
So,
for
yeah,
giving
those
me
of
the
you-
opportunity.
Those of you who are reading, like, would you put her name in the chat and maybe
Sure.
the name of the poem?
And
Because I have a hard time always following things, so that would be great.
Evelyn, I believe Evelyn Brady has signed up. Evelyn, are you there? Evelyn?
Can't hear you.
Okay.
Yes,
Can you hear
Oh,
me?
good.
yes, yes.
Okay. Oh, good. Hi,
Yes.
Evelyn.
Hi. I was thinking about reading this poem, and then when Amanda Gorman poem was read, I thought, oh, I guess I will. This is a poem I wrote the day of the inauguration when Amanda did that amazing poem. I was thinking about how Amanda Gorman, one glistening piece of coal, combusted into a fire that spread over the tinders of our lives, burning away the sorrow of those 4 years, the sunken despair that almost took root, and how the coat she wore was like a yellow bird, feathers that flew across the world, flames of beauty for that one moment of our days. And I was thinking about the 78-year-old white-haired man, somewhat frail, somewhat strong, completely determined, and how he too is a light keeper, perhaps more like embers that glow from decades of feeding fuel to the light of democracy. The glow brings us warmth, even as the embers die, for we all know that new life, new fuel, new energy rises from the steppe. And of that medium, steady flame, I think of Kamala, a woman who, like all women, pull from the sky and the earth, pull from the rain and the sun, pull from anything that bears life and light. New energy for those without the light, without the lantern. She will show the way. And I was thinking about us and how we reflect light back and forth to each other without even realizing. Let us be mourning for each other. Let us be stars to guide the way. Let us be the moon that changes and evolves and becomes new. Let us be the sun waiting each day to arrive. The sons of that young poet from Jamaica and Bombay, dressed in a yellow coat with a red band of courage holding the crown of her hair. Let her sons revolve and revolve around us and create a new fire of passion, of freedom, of hope.
Beautiful.
That's a great tribute. You should make sure you get it published so she'll see it. Did you send it to her?
I have just been thinking of sending it to her.
I think
Thank
should.
you.
I mean, I sent my poem to Gerda Weissman Klein some 20 years ago.
Oh,
She wrote me back. I mean, and then she endorsed my first chapbook. So it was very special. She was so gracious. So, if anybody wonders, I don't know, you all know this, like in the
Oh.
sanctuary, we do not applaud, so we tend to do this to say, yeah, or I tend to do this, but that's
I
me.
like that.
Now, we do have a little more time.
Margaret Gordon, Cricket, do you have a poem? Cricket, I think you signed up.
Coming, but I don't have a poem.
You don't have a poem? Oh,
I just came, actually. I never even said I was coming.
Oh, do read us something, no?
Well, I don't even have, I'm not organized. Next time I will.
Okay, and it didn't have to be your own, I thought.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear you. I didn't know who else would be breathing.
Well,
I
thank
knew
you
you
for
were.
coming. Thank you.
That was great.
You never know with an open reading what's going to
No.
happen. That's what's
And some
fun.
of my friends are
We're
here.
kind of a small but close-knit group here. Irene, did you want to read something else?
Well, it seems to be a Poetry 180 night because I thought, and when you try to think of a favorite poem, it's just about the most impossible thing in the world. So I was thinking about poems about poetry for Poetry Month. So everyone, I think, loves and knows Billy Collins' Introduction to Poetry, which is the opening poem in Poetry 180. And so this is it, Introduction to Poetry. Oh, because when he put this anthology together, the idea was, when he was poet laureate, that each day in school, a poem would be read over the loudspeaker, 180 days of school, and that the poem would not be subject for a test or even a discussion, or it would just be read so that students could hear and enjoy poetry, not feel intimidated or nervous about it. So this is his opening poem. I ask them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out. Or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means.
Oh, that's good.
So remember to enjoy as well as to analyze and savor, and remember to have fun and love poetry. That's what I want to say about Poetry Month. Where are we? We are at, Dave, that silly toy just started. So Nella, would you read a new poem of yours and talk about upcoming months?
Well, I mean, we do have some time. Does anybody else want to read a second poem while we are at it? How about, yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
goody.
Sarah, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Please.
Okay, I hate to follow Billy Collins.
No, go for it.
This is called You Can Only Wave Goodbye with a Broken Wing. I mean rib. I mean, before you break your rib, before you lean forward on the plane to grab your bag under the seat in front of you, before you realize that you're reaching for the unreachable, before you hear your rib snap, you're not thinking about waving goodbye. You're thinking, or maybe not thinking, maybe just knowing, that you will go to all the places you went and you will be with him again. He will be waiting with that full-hearted hello, and you will sense him. You'll go to the mill house and see the painting his cousin made, the Han Dynasty horse on the windowsill, the gleaming wooden dining table, the blue and white tiles in the kitchen where he calmly concocted heaven. And he will be beside you, conducting the tour wordlessly, and you will have the joy of accompanying him. But when you get to the house, when you go back to Karnak and try to decipher the megaliths, when you walk to the boulangerie, when you first unlock the door and innocent, hopeful walk in, you instantly know he's not there. He's not on the towpath or watering the garden. He's not just out walking the dog. He is wholly absent, a vacancy so complete there is not even air. You are not saying hello, wounded bird. You are raising your arm with all the pain of the broken rib and waving goodbye.
Thank you.
Did you write that? You did, didn't you, Sarah?
Yes.
That's beautiful.
It is
Beauty.
wonderful.
It's really touching. I had
Thank you.
another Ada Limon poem that intrigued me.
Yes, you want to
Shall
read
we?
it?
Yes. And may I just ask, so we don't run out of time, Kathy Shoemaker, did you want to read a poem? Or are you listening? Okay. 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 All right. So Jen, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, I've only read a few of hers, so this was just happened to be one of them. It's called Love
Read
Poem.
into the microphone, so your sound is a little in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
I have a pretty ancient laptop, so. This is called Love Poem with Apologies for My Appearance. Might be kind of well known, I'm not sure. Sometimes I think you get the worst of me. The much loved loose forest green sweatpants, the long browless days, hair knotted and uncivilized, a shadowed brow where the devilish thoughts do their hoofed dance on the brain. I'd like to say this means I love you. The strained white cotton t-shirt, the tears, pistachio shells, the mess of orange peels on my desk. But it's different than that. I move in this house with you the way I move in my mind, unencumbered by beauty's cage. I do like I do in the tall grass, more animal me than much else. I'm wrong. It is that I love you, but it's more that when you say it back, lights out, a cold wind through curtains, for maybe the first time in my life, I believe it. That's that.
Thank you.
Do we have some time, Irene and Ganoa, for a Cummings poem?
I think so. And I also see that some people have joined perhaps.
then
have-
then
Well,
then
no,
they should go. Then they should.
But
let
I
them
don't know
go.
if they want to, because they didn't hear when we said if you might want to read, put your name in the chat. So I don't know if the people.
Well, yeah.
Perry,
So-
go ahead, read a poem.
Well, today I was reading Cummings and in English, and then trying to translate it in Greek. And I figured I would try to, and which is a task, but I actually have a book that has both Greek and English. And it's, but I thought maybe it was kind of appropriate to read at least a little bit of Greek, since it's, it's Greek Easter Sunday, right? It's Greek it's Orthodox Easter, let's put it that way. So it's a big weekend for us. But, and it's a poem that I think everybody knows. I carry your heart. Kuvalo tin kardiasu, tin kuvalo mestin dikimu kardia. I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. I'm never without it. Anywhere I go, you go, my dear, and whatever is done by only me is your doing, my darling. I fear no fate, for you are my fate, my sweet. I want no world, for beautiful, you are my world, my true. And it's you are whatever a moon has always meant, and whatever a sun will always sing is you. Now here's the deepest secret nobody knows. Here's the root of the root, and the bud of the bud, and the sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is the wonder that's keeping the stars apart. Kuvalo tin kardiasu, tin kuvalo mestin dikimu kardia. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart.
Beautiful. That's a favorite poem, and that was a treat to have the Greek interwoven in it. That was
What's it called?
Kind of fun.
very.
What's the title?
I carry your heart. Well, they actually most of his poems weren't titled, but that's the first line, so I just called it that.
I have another poem if we have time.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, Evelyn. You're the one who hasn't read a second poem.
I'm Donna.
And Donna and Evelyn, both.
Oh, I
Go
didn't
ahead.
know Evelyn. Evelyn can go first if she.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. This is called Bologna by Louis Jenkins. There's a young couple in the parking lot kissing. Not just kissing, they look as though they might each eat each other up. Kissing, nibbling, biting, mouths wide open, play fighting like young dogs, wrapped around each other like snakes. I remember that, sort of, that hunger, that passionate intensity. And I get kind of nostalgic, craving for it in the way that I get a craving occasionally for the food of my childhood. Bologna on white bread, for instance. One slice of white bread with mustard or Miracle Whip or ketchup, not ketchup. One has to draw the line somewhere. And one slice of bologna. It had a nice symmetry to it, the circle of bologna on the rectangle of bread. Then you folded the bread and bologna in the middle and took a bite out of the very center of the folded side. And when you unfolded the sandwich, you had a hole, a circle in the center of the bread and bologna frame, a window, a porthole from which you could get a new view of the world.
That's good.
Donna, did you want to read something? I mean, sorry, Donna, Evelyn, you have to unmute yourself.
Actually, I was just going to say I have to pick my grandson up at hockey. So sorry, I have to leave. He's waiting there patiently.
Okay,
So-
well, next time.
I hope so. I'm sorry. And thank you all.
Thank you,
I
everyone.
Oh,
Thank you.
was there anybody else who wanted to read before I wrap up the evening? Daniel, you don't have a poem? I know you're sitting on a whole drawer full in your office there.
but no pressure.
They're all poems by you, so you should read them.
So,
There were some really wonderful choices, if you don't mind my saying so. Really enjoyed it very much. But I
good.
think what's going to stick with me is Bologna. And what was it, Irene? It's not about your chest. So,
That was really good.
thank you for all that.
So I just wanted to say before we say goodnight that the May Buffalo Corner will be hosted by Gary Earl Ross and his friends who are all mystery writers. And that has been an annual event from the beginning and one of our most attended and favorite evenings. So please come back for that. And then in June, our last one this spring semester, Catherine Hastings has agreed to come back, and she's luring one of her friends from New York City, a poet I was not familiar with. His name is Slo Nimski. You can look it up. He's author of 10 books of poetry, and his most famous one, or most well-known book, is called Pythagoras in Love. So here you have mathematics, engineering, Daniel, those kinds of things mixed with love, and all of them are sonnets. And I just got a copy of it, and I've been dipping into it regularly in the last week, and I do so recommend. And I feel a little bit happy that we have friends like Catherine Hastings and this new Slo Nimski and so on, and all of you for coming. And I thought if it's okay with you, I'll read, since I read one of my oldest English poems, I wanted to finish with one of my newest. Is that okay?
Sure. Vanilla, I just wanted to say about the last year's wonderful mystery night with Gary Earl Ross. It sent me to the library to read his first, I think it was his first mystery. I thought I'd start at the beginning.
Yes, I think there are 4 or 5 now. I have them here.
Yeah.
And yes, he's getting better all the time. Weaving, getting it tighter and tighter. But it's so much fun to read. You know, he said every big city, Paris has Maigret, you know, all these cities have detectives.
Right.
And he was going to create this detective for
Yeah.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
And to read about these people, and they meet in a bar on Hertel Avenue. And the first one ends up, you know, in the silos. And you have the good guy with a gun, and you have the bad guy with a gun.
Right.
And the good guy is thinking, oh my God, if he shoots me, he will throw me into one of the silos, and nobody will find me until, you know, a year from now or something. So, yeah, it's just to have that milieu that we know so well. And Gary can write. It's just incredible. His dialogue, the way he picks up the voices, and the way he presents. I mean, Perry now is doing an international reading, and Perry brings up and out the African American community local here, and ends up in some of these churches and these people and the way they talk and communicate. It's just it's it's great. So if you haven't picked up Gary's books yet, I really recommend them for a sleepless night. That will keep you going. Anyways,
Murder and mayhem.
here is a new poem I just wrote. Perry, now this time I got Gary and Perry right, but Perry read something about Ukraine, and I think this is inspired by that same idea, but it's all about my family. It's called Border Lines. Cook now the ancient way, black iron kettle on the open fire, like my grandmothers and their mothers did. Put in whatever you find, potato, turnip, rutabaga, carrot, swede. Laugh at the name when you add the swede, so tough and dry. Won't break for nothing, hard to digest. We boiled old Christina when she stopped laying eggs. Heat bricks in the fire, stick them under your skirt. Your great-grandmother was tied to the stockade. For stealing bread to feed her sons, I must give you the ornate antique silver spoon my mother gave me on the night before my wedding. The last thing here of value, large but supple. You can hang it inside your shirt, a leather thong around your neck. I found some fallen apples under your birthday tree, but left them on the ground. Some knowledge we just can't live with. How many people have we never met yet remember? Your mother in the food lines after the Second War, hearing they had too many holes left in those chimneys. Twice now I have dreamt you came in quietly behind me, following. Starling shadow, what does that mean? Thank you.
Thank you.
The line about the holes in the chimneys came from a woman I never met who was Cantor Susan Whaley's mother, survivor of Auschwitz. And she stood in the food lines in Germany after the Second World War. And there were people who made comments to her that there were too many holes in the chimneys. That is, too many Jews escaped the Holocaust. So people have asked me about that line, but that's where it came from. We started with the Holocaust, we're ending with the Holocaust. Does anybody else want to say or read anything, please? Then I guess we're good. So I hope to see all of you again. Irene?
Did we say, is May going to be Zoom hybrid? Do we have any hopes of in person? or-
I don't know yet. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
for this month it was because of Passover. They
Right.
didn't want anybody to bring anything, not
Right.
kosher for Passover into temple and so forth. So I'll let you know.
Okay, and unfortunately, I did say at the beginning that it seems as though there's many people who have COVID right now. Thankfully not so seriously, but still.
So yeah, all I know is that Gary and his crew
Yes.
are willing to come in person,
Right.
and Catherine Hastings and her special guest really want to come in person. But
Okay, we'll see.
at least in June we could be outside.
Right.
We
No,
have
I
that
know.
little space, outside in the back of Shir Shalom, there's like a roof if it's raining, and we can have amplification.
Tent, big tent. Yeah.
So
Harry, do you mind just repeating the hours on Saturday?
Yes, it said 1 p.m. And God, it won't go past 3. I mean, so 1 to 3, let's say 1 to 2:30, something like that.
Okay.
And is it Sunday or Saturday?
Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
The parking is a little difficult there, I should mention. There's only a
was
few
just thinking
spaces
that.
there, but they did suggest that you can use the parking lot across the street next to Burger King, which is I think the St. Christopher's parking lot. That's
Oh.
open, but then be careful of crossing the street because the
Right.
street is very busy there. It's a really nice little place, so I'd like to support them.
And
Great.
maybe
See.
just
And
right on her.
my connection, if you're wondering, is because I'm certainly not Italian, but I'm taking Italian lessons there during the
Ah,
week. And so
molto
so
bene.
I go in and out of there quite a bit, and they've been really kind and open to ideas. So hopefully it'll work out and we can continue to do it.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you to everybody who contributed wonderful poetry. Thank you. Thank you,
Night,
poetry.
everybody. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night,
Pleasant
Every
everyone.
month is poetry month for us.
Be safe.
Okay.